Please welcome Tim Foley, Business Banking Marketing Executive, Long Island, and Lou Trujillo, Commercial Business Development Center Officer from Bank of America. Okay.
So we were tasked with talking about foundations for growth and scalability. Again, I'm Tim Foley. I lead the business banking market efforts for Bank of America on Long Island. We bank companies from $1 million and basically up to 100. Lou is my partner on the SBA side. I have some of my team's colleagues here in the front. Some of the conversations we have with clients, certain themes come up, and I need my glasses, getting old. But the themes that constantly come up and challenges are shifting the mindset from founder to leader, building systems and processes, building a team, focusing on your core value proposition, investing in marketing, measuring and managing by numbers, securing capital, figuring out your value proposition, which probably should have been first, and constantly adapting. We had some great speakers today that can talk about this stuff, but anybody have any thoughts? I would love to make this more than just me talking. I saw a business owner over there. Nothing? Okay. Any challenges that you're facing, or? Lou, any thoughts on the topics?
Sure. Tim, thank you. Just for the room, I'm Lou Trujillo. My title is a bit of a mouthful. I'm the Commercial Business Development Officer. What essentially that means is I sit on deal teams and I work making sure the transactions that our banking population is working on are progressing and getting booked from start to finish. So I work with a full range of companies that often are in the startup mode, and often I work with companies that are north of $100 million in revenue. So I think the reason they asked me to join this today is because I touch the full spectrum of businesses that would typically think about where do we start and how do we get to where we're going. So Tim talked a little bit about the changing of the mindset from founder to leader. I guess we were really blessed. We had some really world-renowned entrepreneurs in this room. And before I even get into that, Kurt asked Steve Madden to define entrepreneur, and I felt like Steve actually struggled with the question a little bit. And to me, it might even be easier for people looking from the outside in to help define that term. To me, the term entrepreneur is synonymous with courage, because it takes a leap to walk away and start something new, be on an island totally on your own. And how do you take that from scalable? How do you make that business scalable? How do you take it from startup to a multinational corporation? How does that happen? And I think that's what we'll talk about a little bit. So Steve, it's interesting. Steve had a few interesting anecdotes. He talked about when he realized he needed an HR department because he needed to figure out how to compliment somebody on their shoes. And this is, something business owners think about. Scalable systems and processes. When you go for more from just your idea, we heard from the John's Crazy Socks guys about the idea for the Down syndrome themed socks and the genesis of their company and how did they start. And they're already selling internationally. Since 2017 they started. They're already selling international business. How did they get to that point? And I think of these things, Tim, as a sort of a continuum. How do business owners start from the beginning? Last year I was in Connecticut at an SBA function where they brought in a bunch of lenders into a room with companies and asked lenders to help these companies get started to their first foray into financing. How do they do it? So I remember having a conversation with a guy who was out of his garage. And I didn't really understand his business because it was an Excel competition business. So you can go places like gaming. Like you see these EA competitions where people go play John Madden football. But this guy goes to Excel competitions. And I guess they compete over who can build the best spreadsheet. But he said this is a thriving, active community. I went home and asked my wife about it because our job is very Excel-based. And she's like, oh, yeah, I need that guy's number because I want to hire people who know how to use Excel at high levels. So anyway, we talked to that guy, and what I explained to him is that the way I think about this is a credit continuum. a ladder, if you will. And there's rungs on a ladder. And where do you start on the first ladder? And it's a little humbling as, a couple of bankers up here to talk to a room full of entrepreneurs and business owners. Stu Leonard, Steve Madden's been in here, and talk to them about how to grow businesses. But I think we can give you a perspective from a financial institution. So you start at that first rung, and Steve Madden talked about it a little bit. He talked about how did he get his company funded. He ran into a little bit of trouble with how he did it, but it's an interesting question. How do you start your funding business? Most people on that first rung, it's bootstrapping, it's family and friends, it's
Credit cards.
It's leveraging everything that you have to get this dream off the ground and get and scale into production. And then you've been in business for a couple of years, and you start thinking about, okay, well, how do I take this business to the next level? I'm busting out of the garage. I need a building. I need a unit, a something. I need a working capital line of credit, because how do I pay for all this inventory? How do I manage my sales cycle? Because my payments come 30 to 90 days after I sell my product. So when you start having those questions, you've gone to the next level and you're up a rung on this ladder. And now you're talking to financial institutions. And this is where probably what I spend 99% of my day doing is SBA, and where SBA can really help. The SBA is a great resource. I know the SBA is here today. They have a booth. I saw representatives from Pursuit who works with the SBA, and I saw representatives from RBAC here today. So there's a lot of people that work with early stage companies in the room today that can, give you ideas on how to grow if you're in that particular phase. But you've got that next stage where you start talking to financial institutions and you start borrowing expensive money, right? You start borrowing under variable rates and things that are a little less favorable, but you're riskier because you're at the beginning. And then you get into the next rung, which is you start talking to larger financial institutions, more traditional banks like a Bank of America or other banks that might be in the room today, and you start asking, how do I get these products? And you've been in business now for a couple of years. And then from there, you become a middle market company, then a corporate level size company, and then all of a sudden you're thinking about the capital markets and how to use public money and the capital markets to grow your company. So from startup to scalable. And that's how you do it. You got to go on the ladder. You got to take the first step. You got to have the courage to start, and you got to keep your eye on the ball. And Tim, I don't know if you want to get more into these points.
Yeah, I think having key partners is good too. Long Island, you're lucky. We have good accounting firms, good attorneys. There's good IT firms. Everybody needs IT with everything that's going on now, marketing. There's groups like Compel. I know they're here today, YPO. So you have these roundtable. So you're not doing this alone, right? It's important that you don't do this alone. Have good people who believe in your culture. Any questions from anybody? Again, we're not the business owners, but we work with them all the time. My team, basically starts at $1 million. So as these companies are growing, they're giving advice. Yes.
What kind of information do you need when you sit down with you about your company in order to apply, and how oftentimes do you get shot down?
Do you want to go?
Yeah, great question, and it's the first question I often hear. And I explain to people that financial institutions look backwards. We need your last couple of years of financials, whether that be tax returns or whether your CPA firm is preparing some other form of financial information from you. We'll need your personal tax returns, your personal financial statements, and these are just the basics. And then there's a whole litany of other things, AR, AP reports. These are the type of things that banks at the commercial level start looking for. So when we talk about as you're scaling your business and you're implementing processes, when is it time to move from you're managing the books yourself to hiring a bookkeeper, to hiring a CFO, to hiring the right accounting firm to help you grow your business? These are all questions as you as you raise up the ladder and take your business to the next level and you scale it.
And budgeting is important. You want to make sure you can grow at the pace you want to grow at. And we look forward, not just backwards. We're more interested in what's going to happen next year and the year after. And I know it's hard to predict, especially with everything that's going on. Like the last 6 years, who would have thought any of this stuff could have happened? Even in the last week, stuff keeps happening.
It's pretty interesting, Tim, because, you know, we had these notes that we prepared before we came out here today. And as I'm listening to Stu Leonard talk and Steve Madden talk, and I'm just writing notes down here about how they actually hit on a lot of these points when they're describing their story. I already talked about Steve and how he needed systems and processes, an example of an HR department, and his example of how he funded his company initially. And then we talk about focusing on your core value proposition. When you identify what it is that you want your company to be about or what you want it to do, and I think the guys from John's Crazy Socks, that wonderful father and son team that inspired all of us, I'm sure, talked about what they're doing. It's just simply amazing the way they thought about it. They are part of a community that they want the core value of their company to always be near and dear to. We're talking about a father who wanted to figure out a future for his son, and they built something incredible. Those are the kind of stories and the kind of companies. You know, we do this all day long, and some hit you a little closer than others, and those are the stories that you really want to help those kind of companies and take it to the next level. But that's just the thought I had as I was going through these things, and we did a pretty good, well, Tim did this, but we did a pretty good job of putting the list together, because when Steve Madden is pretty much ticking down our list of things you need to worry about when you're making your company scalable, I guess we were on the right track of how to think about it, because I was a little nervous. How are we going to talk about a room, you know, there's a couple of bankers, but it's how we think about it and how we fund these businesses.
One of the coolest things for me is, you know, I started doing this 30 years ago, and companies were small. I remember 1-800 Flowers when it was nothing, and I had dinner with Jim McCann last week. He started out of a garage and to grow. When you see your clients, when you see our clients' products on the shelves or out on the streets, I always like it. I would take pictures of people's trucks. It's the success of our clients has been great, and it's really inspiring.
I think, are there any more questions? Oh, yeah. Please, yes.
So the other side of things, one of the things, Susan, the mic is all yours. You never know if it's on. Never miss an opportunity to get a mic in your hand, get a picture. I'm Susan Gaddy. I own a business consulting company, and I love our bankers. And I love the fact that you guys have been doing this for so long that you've probably seen some of the patterns of where things go wrong. So like we get the funding, we had the plan, and then something just kind of derailed for us. Can you share some of the themes or the patterns or the lessons learned that you've seen from the ones that made kind of the mistake that the rest of us don't want to make?
I think the lack of innovation is one. You see a lot of second, third generation businesses unfortunately fail. A sense of entitlement, taking business just to take business when it's not profitable, or if it looks profitable and they pay you in 180 days, it can choke your financials and cash flow. Those are two things that come up, right? Not being innovative, not being adaptive, and just taking business to take business, taking the wrong business.
Yes, from my perspective, I would say it also has a lot to do with how you manage your data. If you've been running your business for 10 years, I'm coming in and you're requesting something of me. You want some sort of financing, some sort of support. I need data that I can use. I need financials that make sense, and I need to be able to understand your company by looking through the numbers. So I think when you're scaling your company, have control of your data. Understand that you're making decisions based on quantitative measures and not just hunches. Hunches are what got you started. To scale, you really have to have control of the data.
You're the consultant, you know KPIs, right? You talk about that with your clients all the time. And like Lou said, at the beginning it's intuition. And then at the end, it's data. Use the data to make decisions.
Yes. Anybody else? All right, and we're at 0.
Great. Oh, perfect. I didn't even see that.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody.